Most people defend themselves and lose. This video shows you how to stay silent, stay calm, and let your critics build your reputation for you. Criticism is not just judgment, it is proof that someone is paying attention. The average person takes it as an attack, a sign that they did something wrong, and immediately feels the urge to defend or explain. But to the Machiavellian mind, criticism is never just words thrown at you, it is currency. It is value disguised as negativity. Every critic is spending energy, time, and emotion on you, which means you already hold space in their mind. They are forced to speak your name to give you presence, to show the world that you matter enough to provoke a reaction. And if you know how to use it, criticism becomes a weapon that makes you stronger every time someone tries to weaken you. When you understand this, you stop fearing critics and start welcoming them. Because here is the secret most people miss. People never criticize those beneath them. No one spends time tearing down someone they do not see as a threat. If you are invisible, you are safe, but you are also powerless. When criticism comes, it means you have risen to a level where others are forced to respond to your existence. They may call you arrogant, selfish, fake, or manipulative, but underneath their words is a confession. They see you, they feel you, they cannot ignore you. And that is the hidden currency inside every negative remark. The mistake most people make is rushing to pay back that criticism with defense. They feel the sting of the words, and instead of letting that sting turn into proof of their own importance, they try to erase it. They explain themselves, they argue, they clarify, and in doing so, they destroy the very power that criticism was giving them. Because the moment you defend yourself, you admit the critic had authority to judge you. You admit their words landed. You admit you were moved, and in power games, perception is everything. Once you flinch, the room sees weakness, but when you hold still, when you accept the criticism as if it is beneath comment, you turn it into a crown on your head. Think of the most powerful figures in history, the ones who seemed untouchable. They were criticized endlessly, yet they rarely defended themselves. They understood that silence lets the crowd decide, and the crowd almost always sides with the one who does not look rattled. Criticism without defense begins to look like obsession. The critic starts repeating themselves, growing louder, while you remain still. Suddenly, people stop questioning you and start questioning them. Why are they so fixated? Why do they keep talking? Why do they look so emotional while you look calm? This is how criticism, once seen as a threat, becomes fuel for your authority. The truth is, you cannot control what people say about you, but you can control what you do with it. Most waste it by trying to erase it. The Machiavellian builds with it. He understands that every critic is doing free work for him, spreading his name, reminding the world he exists, making him impossible to ignore. That is why criticism is not weakness, it is hidden currency. And if you learn how to hold it instead of reject it, you will see that every word against you is another stone in the fortress of your power. The first instinct when someone criticizes you is to defend yourself, to explain what you meant, to clarify your intentions, to justify your actions. It feels natural, even noble, because you believe that if people just hear your side of the story, they will understand you and the problem will disappear. But this instinct is a trap. Every defense, no matter how reasonable, shrinks you in the eyes of others because it admits their words had weight. It admits that you needed to respond, that you could not let the accusation breathe on its own, and in that single move you lower yourself to the critic's level. The truth is, the crowd is never really listening to your explanation. They are watching your reaction. They are studying your body language, the tone in your voice, the urgency with which you rush to clear your name. And what they see is not strength, but a flinch. In power games, perception is everything, and the one who flinches first is already seen as losing. Even if your explanation is flawless, even if your reasoning is solid, the very fact that you needed to explain at all leaves a mark of weakness. People assume that if you had nothing to hide, you would not be scrambling to prove yourself. Defending yourself also hands over control of the frame. The moment you argue, you accept the terms set by your critic. You are no longer leading the conversation, you are following their script. They say you are arrogant, and instead of letting the words hang, you rush to prove you are not. They say you are selfish, and you scramble to show evidence of your generosity. But notice what happened. You accepted their judgment as legitimate, And once you do that, they own the narrative. They have made you dance on their stage while the audience watches, and every word you speak digs you deeper into the hole they created for you. The most dangerous part of defending yourself is that it makes you predictable. Everyone knows how you will respond when attacked. They know you will explain, clarify, and justify, which means they can pull you into endless cycles of defense. Critics thrive on this because they are not looking for truth, they are looking for control. And every time you answer them, you confirm that they have it. You might win an argument here or there, but you lose something far greater, the aura of untouchability. Think of the people you quietly admire, the ones who seem larger than life. They do not rush to correct every insult or clear up every misunderstanding. They let others speak. They let the words fall flat. They let silence do the work. And because they do not shrink, they grow. The critic looks emotional, the defender looks small, and the silent one looks powerful. This is why defending yourself makes you smaller, not because the critic was right, but because you admitted they were worth explaining yourself to. The paradox is simple. The less you defend, the stronger you appear. The more you explain, the weaker you look. In power, silence is not absence, it is presence. And when you master it, criticism no longer reduces you, it elevates you. When someone criticizes you, they think they are exposing you, but more often than not, they are exposing themselves. What people say about you is rarely a reflection of who you are. It is a reflection of how they feel about themselves when they are in your presence. The impatient will call you arrogant because your calm confidence makes them restless. The insecure will call you fake because they cannot understand how someone can stand firm without needing constant approval. The bitter will call you manipulative because they cannot accept that influence comes naturally to those who do not beg for it. Every attack is not just an attempt to wound you, it is a confession of their hidden frustrations. The Machiavellian mind does not fight these accusations, it flips the spotlight. Instead of thinking, why did they say that about me, you think, what does this reveal about them? The critic always gives themselves away. A man who calls you selfish is often a man who feels overlooked. A woman who says you are cold is often someone who craves your attention. A colleague who calls you reckless may be the one too afraid to take a risk themselves. Once you start looking at criticism through this lens, you no longer take it personally. You take it as information, as a mirror that shows you the weak spots of those around you. This is power because while others rush to defend themselves, you stand still and let the critic bleed truth about themselves. When you remain calm, the crowd sees the difference. They hear the accusation, but they see no reaction. Slowly they realize the words are not telling a story about you. They are telling a story about the accuser. Their tone is sharp, their face tight, their need to be heard overwhelming. You, on the other hand, stand composed, almost amused. The room begins to shift. The critic does not look brave anymore. They look emotional, unstable, even envious. Without you saying a word, their attack turns into self-destruction. The best part is that you do not need to do anything dramatic to make this reversal work. A short phrase is enough. If someone calls you manipulative, you answer, if that is how you see it. If they call you arrogant, you say, strange how confidence makes people uncomfortable. You do not defend, you redirect, and in doing so, you force them to carry the weight of their own words. They expected a fight, a denial, a long explanation. Instead, they are left holding silence and the uneasy feeling that maybe they said too much about themselves. Criticism is unavoidable, but weakness is not. The weak explain, the strong reflect. The critic always comes with their own cracks, and when they attack, those cracks widen for everyone to see. If you can hold still and let the light shine back on them, you no longer fear criticism, you use it. The insult dies on their lips and becomes a confession, a mirror they never meant to hold up, but one you made everyone see. Silence is not absence. It is presence at its highest form. Most people confuse speaking with strength. They believe the louder they are, the more power they show. But in reality, the strongest force in a room is often the one who does not rush to fill the air with words. Silence unsettles people because it cannot be read, it cannot be argued with, it cannot be pulled into a fight. When someone criticizes you and you meet it with silence, you are not retreating, you are advancing in the most strategic way possible. You are placing the weight of their own words back onto their shoulders, and forcing them to carry it alone. What happens next is predictable. They start to repeat themselves, hoping to get a reaction. They double down, raising their tone, sharpening their accusations, trying harder to make the audience believe them. But with every new attempt, they reveal how badly they need your response. They expose their insecurity by proving they cannot stand in silence the way you can. You do not need to argue. You do not need to explain. You only need to let them tire themselves out while you remain still. In time, the crowd stops paying attention to the accusation and starts paying attention to the contrast. One person is calm, composed, untouchable. The other is restless, emotional, unstable. Without saying a word, you win. Silence also creates imagination, and imagination is often more powerful than explanation. When you do not respond, people begin to wonder, why did he not answer? Does he know something we do not? Is he too strong to be bothered by such a small attack? In the absence of words, they fill the gap with their own stories, and almost always those stories elevate you higher than any defense could. A short silence in the right moment can feel heavier than the longest speech. It plants doubt in your critic and fascination in everyone else. The hardest part about using silence is resisting the natural urge to fight back. Your ego will beg you to defend yourself. Your pride will want to correct the insult. But discipline means letting the words hang unanswered. This does not mean you walk away weak. It means you hold your ground without lowering yourself into the mud. The critic expects a battle, but when you do not give it to them, they look foolish for swinging at smoke. Silence makes their weapon useless because a sword cannot cut what will not meet it. In every arena, from business to relationships, silence is a form of dominance. It shows you are not desperate to be understood, you are not eager to prove yourself, you are not rattled by the noise of others. You understand that power is not about endless words, it is about presence. And nothing builds presence like the discipline of saying nothing when everyone expects you to speak. That is the art of silence, the ability to win not by striking back but by refusing to enter the arena at all. Sometimes silence is enough to crush a critic, but there are moments when silence alone is not the move. There are times when the person attacking you is not satisfied with being ignored. They want you cornered. They want the room to believe that your silence is weakness. This is when reframing becomes your most powerful tool. Reframing means you do not defend the jab, you redirect it. You do not try to erase the accusation, you make it collapse under its own weight by twisting the meaning until it proves your strength instead of your weakness. Think about the difference. A critic calls you arrogant. The average person rushes to say they are not arrogant, they are misunderstood, they only meant well. But the Machiavellian does not defend. He calmly says, confidence tends to upset the insecure. In that moment, the attack has been flipped. It no longer paints you as arrogant, it paints the critic as insecure. The crowd feels the shift instantly. What was meant to shame you now shames them, and you did it without raising your voice or losing your calm. The same happens when someone calls you fake. The weak response is to insist on your authenticity, to list examples of your honesty, to beg people to believe you are genuine. But the strong response is simple. People only call you fake when they stop getting what they want. Again, the frame changes. Now the critic looks needy, bitter, dependent. You are no longer the one on trial, they are. By refusing to explain, you turn the spotlight back onto their motives, exposing what they never meant to reveal. Reframing is not defense. It is offense disguised as detachment. Every short phrase you deliver should not sound like an argument. It should sound like a mirror. Calm, precise, cutting. The critic expects you to panic, to give long explanations, to drown yourself in words. But instead, you give them a sentence so sharp it silences the room. You do not need to explain yourself when you have already shifted the meaning of the entire exchange. The key is detachment. You cannot reframe with anger or sarcasm, because that makes it look like you are still emotionally tied to the insult. True reframing comes with serenity, almost as if the words did not touch you at all. That is what makes it powerful. The critic looks heated, you look calm, and the room reads the difference. Presence is louder than proof, and reframing lets you keep your presence intact while making the critic unravel. In the end, reframing turns their weapon into your shield. You let them swing first, But instead of blocking, you redirect their energy until they cut themselves. This is why reframing works better than defense. Defense lowers you to their level, reframing keeps you above it. You did not just survive the attack, you grew stronger because of it. And the critic, instead of walking away victorious, walks away exposed. Every attack against you is not just an insult, it is free publicity. Every critic who speaks your name, every person who questions your character, every rival who tries to throw shade is doing work for you that you did not have to pay for. They are spreading your name, keeping you in conversations, reminding people that you exist. The average person hides from criticism. They shrink when others talk badly about them. They wish to erase their name from the mouths of others. But the Machiavellian does not think like this. He understands that being talked about, whether in praise or in attack, is the very proof of relevance. Silence around your name is the real death. Noise is power, even if that noise is negative. Look at the world of influence, business, or politics. The ones who are remembered are not the ones who never faced criticism. They are the ones who attracted it constantly. Their names were dragged through arguments, debates, and headlines, yet with every attack they grew larger because their presence refused to vanish. The more their enemies fought them, the more the crowd remembered them. Your critic is your advertiser, but instead of spending money, they spend their own energy to keep your reputation alive. The key is how you hold yourself when this happens. If you run from criticism, it looks like shame. If you defend yourself endlessly, it looks like weakness. But if you stand calm, even amused, and let the storm unfold, people begin to see that you are not destroyed by their words, you are fueled by them. Every critic becomes another sign that you are too significant to be ignored. When you understand this, you stop fearing attack and start welcoming it. You know that your enemies are the ones building your myth louder than your friends ever could. This is why the Machiavellian does not rush to silence critics. He lets them talk, because in talking they reveal their obsession. They keep saying his name, they keep pointing toward him, they keep throwing attention his way. And attention is the true currency of power. In a world where everyone is fighting to be seen, the one with the most critics is the one who has already won the war of visibility. Your friends will clap for you, but your enemies will shout your name so loudly that the entire room cannot help but notice you. The smartest move is to amplify this without touching it directly. You never argue with them, but you let their words spread. You let people see how much effort is spent trying to pull you down, and in contrast, how calm you remain above it all. The critic burns energy, you gain presence. They sweat, you grow. This is why criticism is not something to fear, but something to use. It is the cheapest and most effective marketing you will ever get. Every enemy who attacks you is unknowingly writing your legend, keeping you relevant, visible, unforgettable. The coldest move is not silence, and it is not redirection, it is inversion. Inversion means you take the very word meant to wound you and turn it into a crown on your head. Most people, when attacked, want to erase the insult. They rush to say, "I am not like that." They beg to be seen as innocent. But the Machiavellian does not erase, he absorbs. He takes the accusation and makes it a weapon of his own. Someone calls him manipulative, he says no, strategic. Someone calls him arrogant, he says no, certain. Someone calls him cold, he says no, unbothered. In a single move, the critic's word has been stolen, reshaped, and turned into proof of power. This works because people secretly admire what others try to insult. They may sneer at the word arrogant, but deep down they wish they had the confidence to walk without apology. They may attack the word manipulative, but in private they envy those who can bend a room with presence and choice. They may mock the word cold, but in their quiet moments they dream of being untouchable instead of fragile. When you invert the blade, you reveal what others hide, the truth that most criticism is just jealousy in disguise. The crowd feels this, even if they cannot say it out loud. They see the critic grow heated and they see you stay calm, and in that contrast, they sense who really holds control. The reason inversion is so powerful is because it does not just block the attack, it steals it. The critic can no longer use the same word against you because you have claimed it. You have turned it from poison into armor, from weakness into strength. Every time they repeat it, they only remind people of how you wore it with pride. The critic wanted to paint you as guilty, but you rebranded the word into status. This is the move that takes the breath out of a room, because the crowd is not used to seeing someone embrace what others run from. Inversion must be done with calmness. If you sound angry, it looks defensive. If you sound sarcastic, it looks like denial. But if you sound detached, unshaken, almost amused, the effect is surgical. The critic expects you to panic, and when you do not, they begin to panic themselves. They realize the very blade they sharpened has been turned against them, and the more they try to insist it was an insult, the more foolish they appear. The crowd does not remember the critic's intent. They remember your composure and your boldness in flipping the narrative. The lesson is simple. Do not fear the labels others throw at you. Take them, twist them, and make them yours. Arrogant becomes certain, manipulative becomes strategic, cold becomes composed. When you do this, you do not just survive criticism. You transform it into dominance. What was once meant to break you becomes the very thing that builds your aura. And in that moment, you prove that words have no power unless you hand it to them. Criticism, when left unanswered or calmly inverted, stops being damage and begins to work in your favor. What was meant to harm you starts to build something far more powerful, something that cannot be explained in plain words, an aura. Aura is that invisible presence people feel around you, the sense that you are larger than life, that you carry something untouchable, that there is more to you than what is seen on the surface. It is not created by defending yourself or proving your innocence. It is created by letting others talk, while you remain calm and above it. Every insult left hanging, every accusation left unbothered, adds to the mystery that feeds your aura. People cannot stand silence. They cannot stand unanswered words. When you do not clarify or explain, they begin to whisper. They begin to speculate. They begin to invent stories. They ask themselves, why did he not respond? Why did she not explain? Why did they seem so calm? In that silence, they start building their own version of who you are. And the truth is, their imagination will always make you larger than your reality. They will overestimate your strength. They will assume you know something they do not. They will create myths out of your refusal to play the ordinary game of defense. This is why aura matters more than explanation. Explanations satisfy curiosity, but they also shrink you. Once you explain, you remove the mystery. You give people the full picture, and in doing so, you lower yourself to their level of understanding. Aura thrives on what is not said. The fewer answers you give, the more questions remain, and questions in the minds of others are what build your authority. The unknown always feels bigger, scarier, and more powerful than the known. When you do not rush to correct every false story or deny every rumor, you let those stories grow into myths that make you seem untouchable. Think of the figures who are remembered with reverence. They were not the ones who argued with every critic or explained themselves at every turn. They were the ones who held stillness, who let the world speculate, who let their enemies shout while they themselves remained calm and unreadable. People began to say things like, he must have a reason. She must know more than she shows. They must be too powerful to care. Slowly, their names became heavier, their presence thicker, their reputation unshakable. All of this was built not by words, but by restraint. Criticism is fuel for aura when you stop treating it like poison. Instead of defending, you let it float. Instead of reacting, you let it echo. Instead of explaining, you let others do the work of guessing. And the more they guess, the stronger you look. Aura is not about being loved or understood. It is about being respected and even feared because of the unknown. When you let criticism become myth, you build something more lasting than clarity. You build authority that cannot be challenged because it does not rely on facts. It relies on presence. The final stage of dealing with criticism is not learning clever comebacks or mastering the art of silence. It is reaching a point where criticism itself no longer stirs anything inside you. This is the state of immunity, the place where words thrown your way pass through you without leaving a mark. At this stage, you do not even feel the pull to defend yourself. You do not feel the sting of accusation. You do not feel the urge to prove your worth. You have risen above the game where critics try to bait you into reaction, and in doing so, you have entered what can only be called the untouchable state. The untouchable state is not about arrogance. It is not about pretending you do not care while secretly battling doubt inside. It is about truly understanding that criticism does not define you. and therefore does not deserve your energy. When you reach this level, you do not even see an insult as an attack. You see it as noise, and noise cannot reach someone who has chosen to live above it. Critics keep talking, but their words no longer land. The crowd keeps watching, but all they see is your calm presence, while others exhaust themselves trying to pull you down. This level of calm has an effect that most people underestimate. The critic begins to look desperate because their energy is loud and unstable, while yours is still and unbothered. The audience sees the difference and instinctively aligns with the one who is calm. They might not even agree with you, but they respect the way you remain composed. Respect, not agreement, is what builds lasting authority. And the more often you meet criticism with calm immunity, the more people begin to see you as something greater than human weakness. They see you as untouchable. It is important to understand that the untouchable state is not about suppressing emotions, it is about mastering them. You do not get there by pretending to be cold, you get there by training yourself to no longer need external validation. When you no longer rely on approval to feel strong, disapproval loses its power to make you weak. That is why critics cannot touch someone who has crossed this line, because there is nothing inside left for them to control. At this point, every criticism becomes proof of your strength. The more people try to attack you and fail to move you, the more others assume you must be operating on a higher level. The myth builds itself, because people cannot comprehend how someone can be so immune, and when they cannot understand, they overestimate. They imagine you must be stronger, wiser, more dangerous than you really are. And that is the secret of aura. Untouchability is not just silence, it is silence combined with certainty, the knowledge that you do not need to fight for ground you already own. This is the end game. You no longer meet the sword with a shield, you no longer even need to turn the blade. You let the weapons of others fall uselessly at your feet. And with every failed attempt to shake you, your power grows heavier. That is the untouchable state. The place where criticism is no longer a threat but a mirror that proves you cannot be moved. Maybe this video helped you see yourself or someone you know in a different way. Feel free to let us know via a like or in the comments. And if you want more wisdom and guidance in becoming a better version of yourself, subscribe now. This is the moment to start becoming the person you really want to be.